Since the coronavirus pandemic began, businesses have had to make decisions on whether to allow employees to work from home. But some still had to go to their workplace with concerns about the conditions. And this has led to several lawsuits between employees and their bosses. Earlier this week, I spoke with attorney Rob Crain out of Dallas about these legal battles. Rob, thanks for joining us tonight. The COVID-19 pandemic is creating some tension between workers and their bosses, and some are now suing. Let's talk about those lawsuits. From what you're hearing, why are those workers suing, and do their lawsuits have any merit?
Well, each case is an individual basis, and it's all fact-specific. Those employees who were at workplaces where there was known to be corona cases, who asked for PPE and were denied PPE, obviously those employees on that side of the spectrum have got, a stronger set of facts. But they're also going to have to deal with whether or not there was any other exposure those employees may have had outside of the workplace. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got folks, who are working for good employers who have taken reasonable precautions, who have given out masks and required safety shields and proper distancing. And in those cases, the workers are going to have a more difficult time if they are even able to get past really first base. So each case is fact specific, and it really depends on how responsible and reasonable the employers are being, and what other exposures there were to employees who may be contracting corona.
Absolutely. And there are some new rules that went into place April 1st requiring some businesses to pay their employees a certain amount for a certain period of time away from work. Are some arguing that that's not enough?
We are in a very unique time in our nation's history, and the new pay provisions that are going in, they are being accompanied with policies that are just now being interpreted. Whether or not we're going to have sufficient funds for our workers who, incomes are not coming in at the moment, that's a bigger question for our economy as well. But as far as legalities and so forth go, we're really in uncharted waters. And this is a time where our employers and employees really need to find some common ground. And it's a stressful time, and it's a difficult time for that. So to answer your question, I don't know if it'll be enough. As to whether or not we're going to work it out policy-wise, we're working it out as we go right now more than anything else.
Yeah, well, many lawsuits that we have seen are about taking time off from work, but what about when it comes to going back to work? Are you seeing some lawsuits being filed because some at-risk workers think it's just too early to go back?
Well, we've had several instances where employers were adamant that their employees not wear face masks. For instance, in restaurants, the restaurateur owner did not want that atmosphere of customers and servers, staff wearing masks, and they made it clear on their website, if that's a problem for you as a customer, don't come in, come see us later. And they told their workers, don't come in, don't come to work if you're going to wear a mask. And that went to court, and the courts have generally, and again, it's a jurisdiction by jurisdiction, have sided with the worker saying, no, you've got to make some reasonable efforts here to protect workers from these instances. So we're having that initial battle to start with on whether, what is the shape of our current workplace, and then the lawsuits that are following as far as, what is being provided for these workers. Again, those are going to be very fact specific and difficult to judge to start with.
Well, typically, what are workers hoping to get out of their lawsuits? Are they typically looking for compensation?
Again, right now, what we're seeing is we're really seeing really the parameters of our new workplace, the new environment that we're going to be working in, whether we're in restaurants, whether it's in factories with folks working side by side. What folks are asking for and where relief is being given more immediately is in workplace conditions, and trying to establish a safe place so that folks don't contract corona. Now, for those instances where we have the first case filed in the state of Texas of a worker who contracted coronavirus at work and passed. those workers or their families in this instance will be seeking what their typical damages under any tort system for wrongful death damages and that sort of thing. So, you got a broad spectrum of what's happening right now, and our courts are looking at a lot of issues.
Interesting. In your opinion, is this just the beginning? Do you anticipate a wave of lawsuits as more businesses start to reopen and try to get back to normal?
My brain tells me, yes, we will see more lawsuits. My heart tells me, I hope that we take this opportunity to recognize that we are in a difficult time that has tension, and not just emotional tension, but also financial tension. A lot of our businesses have been closed. They're trying to make enough money to pay the back bills, to pay the bills going forward. And they're going to have added costs with additional protections, and they've got to balance out what they're doing as far as additional costs. And what I'm hopeful is that we recognize in our country we've got a freedom to wear a mask, we got a freedom not to wear a mask, but right now what the time is to exercise our responsibility to one another and to be as safe as we can. And I'm hopeful that employers will take reasonable steps and that the employees will follow those guidelines, so that we don't see as many lawsuits as what typically happens after a tragedy like this.